All right, so hi everyone, welcome to our, I think, 9th end of work cycle update for Surfliner stakeholders. Thank you all for coming today. We will try to keep this presentation both informative and concise. And whether you're joining us today or watching the recording, we appreciate your participation in the Surfliner project. These updates were created in response to stakeholder feedback that it would be helpful to hold regular high-level update meetings at the end of each of our work cycles to share what the team accomplished. As a reminder, we also do a sprint review and a demo on the last day of each 2-week sprint to provide more granular details. And these recordings, as well as this recording, are all shared on the Surfliner blog along with a written summary, and that blog's at surfliner.ucsd.edu. And also just a quick bit of housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded, so please keep yourself muted if you're not speaking to help with the recording quality. If you have any questions, feel free to either enter them into the chat as you think of them. But in the interest of time, we are going to ask to hold all questions until the very end. All right, so here is today's agenda. Unfortunately, Elisa and I think Michael Stewart are both out today, either with their own illnesses or that of their families. And so the rest of us are going to do our best to fill in for them. So there may be the potential that we will need to record a little addendum to this afterwards. And if that happens, we will go ahead and share that during the blog as well, or on the blog as well. So to get us started, just with a quick work cycle overview. So for those of you who are new to these, the Surfliner team generally works together in sort of roughly 56-day on-off work cycles with a 2-week buffer in between. And so what this usually translates to is 4 2-week sprints. So our most recent work cycle started on February 14th and wrapped up. Nope, I got the wrong dates here in my slide notes. Our most recent work cycle started on July 10th. I was like, it is not February. Our most recent work cycle started on July 10th and wrapped up on September 10th. This work cycle focused on Lark, Comet, and Daylight. But before I turn it over to Margaret to talk about Lark updates, I wanted to share a few other important milestones that happened during this work cycle. So the first very exciting update is that the Surfliner team has expanded. Right before the start of the work cycle, UC Santa Cruz reached out about getting involved and participating. And so we are so thrilled that they have joined, that you all have joined us, for those of you who are here. And it was really, really great to start seeing members of the UC Santa Cruz team work alongside those of us from Santa Barbara and San Diego. So yay, we're so glad you're here. We also, during this work cycle, did have a few team member transitions. So Tamsin Wu, who had been both our Comet Tech Lead and the Associate Director for Digital Library Engineering at UCSB, moved into a new role on campus as a cloud architect. But we are really happy that Tamsin's replacement, our new Associate Director, David Moles, joined us just 3 weeks ago. And so super thrilled. The other thing that happened during this work cycle is we had our first in-person all hands since 2019 at UC San Diego. This was a hybrid meeting because unfortunately not all of us could be there in person. But it was really great for those of us who were able to be there to be all in the same room together after so long. There were a few highlights for me from this meeting. We did do a prioritization check-in, and then we had a lot of great discussions focused on the team structure and the roles, and also rebalancing of the portfolio. So you may remember this if you went to one of the recent updates, I think the last one, where the team has started doing these prioritization exercises, both at the beginning of the year and then midway through. So the one shown here on top is the original prioritization after that session. You can see that the stars indicates work that has been completed, and then the green triangles indicate things that we had done meaningful progress on. We took the opportunity of being in person to just check in and make sure that the priorities were still appropriate. You'll see, I know that the text is pretty tall or small on this screen. If you go to the blog, there's links to this board. But you can see like Orange Empire sort of moved around. So there was a few reshufflings, but for the most part, it was really great to check in and make sure that we were still on the right track. The other thing we talked a lot about was structure and roles for the project. When we initially started this collaboration almost 6 years ago, we started out with just 2 projects or products. Our initial ones were Lark and Starlight. And we really used the structure that we had developed then, where we had a tech lead, a product owner, our subject matter experts, the technical folks. And over time, as we added a bunch more stuff to the portfolio, we hadn't really had a chance to check in to see how well that structure was still working. And we also came to realize that structure works really great for things that were products that had a user interface and users were using it, but maybe wasn't quite the right fit for things that were more internal things that the products themselves sort of interacted with as opposed to an end user. So we had a really great discussion. Out of that discussion, we realized that we actually had sort of 2 categories of things that we're now calling products and things that we're calling components. And that for those things calling components, we actually need a different type of model of leadership for those. So for all of the things here you see are components, we're going to be doing a rebalancing of roles. A lot of these things formerly had both a tech lead and a product owner. They now will just have a component lead. And so we're just starting to take a look at sort of rebalancing across the portfolio. Some folks like Tamsin have now dropped off. And so we're going to be looking at just some reshuffling of roles over the upcoming months. But it was a really wonderful discussion. All right, I think that's it for me. And so I'm going to turn it over to Margaret.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking, I think, about all of the products that we're doing today. But let's start with Lark. Lark was pretty straightforward. Can you move to the next slide? So here are the goals and progress with Lark. We don't have really anything to demo, I don't think, but we do have some slides for the second point. So our first goal was to deploy it into staging and production. This is something that's been kind of a soft goal, I think, for the past several work cycles. And we've had some difficulty making it actually happen, but we finally did get it deployed into staging. I don't believe it's currently deployed into production. In the process of deploying it, we uncovered a few questions about access controls and how we want to architecture Lark to make sure that not anyone can go in and edit things in there. And so I think we held off on actually deploying it to production, and what we have in staging currently is not really persisting any data until we can resolve those access control questions. But we have all the pieces in place in terms of the DevOps and the CI required to make that happen once we resolve those questions. The other thing we did is we began conversations regarding the user interface for Lark. So we're planning on using Daylight, which I'll talk about in a moment, to develop that user interface. The hope is that we'll be able to share some components between what we're doing with Lark and what we're doing with discovery platforms. This work cycle, all we did with respect to this is create mockups of what that user interface might look like. So you can move to the next slide. So this is one of the MVP mockups that we made for creating a new authority record. You can move to the next slide. Here is editor for editing raw RDF. This is a feature that is in the current UCSD authority control. So we went ahead and mocked something up for that. You can move to the next slide. And this is for a batch import. This is, again, we had Arwen Hut at UCSD demo their existing authority control solution. So we went through and mocked up all of the different things there. And I think that's it for Lark. Oh, there's another one. Searching linked records. And is there more? There is. Heading merge. To merge things from an Excel or a CSV or whatever. So we did a lot of mockups. Is the short version here, and we have little things. None of these are functional, and we didn't actually build them out in daylight. But we did a lot of different components. Okay, that was all the Lark mockups. So there was quite a bit of work done there. That was primarily Elisa, who did all of that. And now onto daylight. We're going to see a few more mockups. So this is daylight. Just as a recap, is our micro front end solution. It's not a product in itself. It's more a collection of tools and starter components that we can use to build various front ends. So, and I will demo these ones because these ones are actually built out into somewhat functional web pages. So this is a starter page. What we did, we had a meeting near the beginning of the work cycle where we went through, I think, both ADRL, which is an existing platform that we have over at UCSB, and then also the just like default Blacklight starter instance. And we went through and we kind of figured out which components are in that page that we would also need if we were to develop our own front-end solution. So, and then we broke that up, and then Elisa and David Trujillo over at UCSD went and created basically all of the components. So here is the kind of welcome page for just a starter Blacklight welcome page. You can move to the next one. This is what a collection search might look like. So we mocked that up, and you can move to the next one. And then this is as far as we got initially on an object page. So this is just listing a bunch of metadata. And we last work cycle did some work on getting a triple IF viewer in. So we didn't try integrating that yet, but that's in the future. And then here's the demo. So I will go ahead and share my screen and just bring up these same pages. Hopefully everyone can see that. And you can see that these are functional. This is somewhat functional. There's not a backing application to this. These are just HTML pages right now that are composing all of these components. But one thing to call out is that all of these pieces here are separate components that are all being deployed separately. So here you have this composed page. Here you have this composed page. This header is the same in both of these. So we only have to change it once if it changes, and then that'll change it everywhere. And same thing with the search bar and the facets. These are all independent pieces that we can then reuse in Lark. We can reuse in other discovery platforms. So there was a lot of work done this work cycle to get this all built. But all of these things are reusable. And the hope is that once we have enough of these pieces, creating a new discovery platform will be very easy because it's just sticking them all together and configuring them appropriately. So this is just the somewhat more live version of what those screenshots showed. Now we're on to comment.
Can I jump in real quick, Margaret?
Yeah, go ahead, Gabriella.
So before you dive into the goals for comment and the demo, I just want to take the moment to sincerely thank you for stepping in as our interim tech lead since Tamsin's departure. And Margaret, you've done a fantastic job leading our team, comment team, but not just that, the other Surfliner teams, as you're showing us. And over the past couple of months, you've done an incredible job. I thank you, really appreciate your dedication and support. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. So our comment goals, we tried to keep short this work cycle. A lot of the focus, there's two reasons for that. One was a lot of the focus was on daylight and getting that going. The other reason was that we were a little shorter staffed this work cycle than we have been in past work cycles because I think both campuses had some local work going on that really impacted who was able to contribute. So at the same time, we had UCSC coming in. We did have some Ruby developers who were still committed to the Surfliner project this work cycle. We wanted to make sure that they had things to do. So we did kind of sketch out some loose comment goals for this work cycle, and we made good progress on those things. The big thing that we wanted to focus on was improving collections. So things we did there, we split, and I'll demo all of these, is we split out projects from collections in the interface. Projects are the things that have workflows associated with them, whereas collections are just collections of objects. And those used to be lumped together into one category. And we've now separated those in the user interface because our intention is that those have pretty different uses. We now fully support collection metadata in comment. And we had a discussion, I believe at the end of last work cycle, about what we could do to improve publication of objects in a collection. And so we've made some improvements there as well. And these are all things that we decided on because we see them as prerequisites to getting discovery platforms built. A discovery platform, we want to be able to support objects being in collections as opposed to just sitting around loosely. So having this metadata and having these things ironed out seemed like a good goal. I think that's our only slide, yeah. So I will demo that bit. I will say that I'm demoing this in a local environment right now. We discovered at the end of the work cycle that our staging environment has a bunch of kind of loose data hanging around from it turned out that in upstream high racks, it wasn't properly cleaning up some of the workflow information. And our staging environment at UCSB has been around for a few years now and had lots of collections and projects and things put into it. And so that was kind of filling things up. So we're in the process of cleaning all of that up and making it more usable again. But because we are kind of in an intermediate state with that, I'm just running this demo locally right now so that we don't run into any issues there. So here I am. I will go ahead to the dashboard. You can see right away here we have projects. And this is the Shoreline project and default project. These are the same projects that probably we're familiar with. And then we have collections, and then collections are the actual collections that you can have. So I am going to go ahead and create a new collection. Pull up my demo collection. You'll see now that there's this additional fields button. We only have one additional field because this is just the test metadata. If you go and do this in UCSB staging, there's a lot of fields that appear here because I think we allow pretty much any metadata property to appear on both objects and collections. Here there's just one, so I'll just call it demo collection line as the alternative title. And then you can see that appears right here on the page as well. And if you go to edit it, it also shows up in the additional fields. So that's something that we did. We'd done a little bit of work on this in a prior work cycle. But both of those pieces were not there yet. It didn't save it when you were first creating the collection, and it did not show it up on this page. So both of those are new things that we've done. Now I'm going to go and create an object. I'll just make a generic object, put my test object, and make it public. And try to get Zoom to let me actually scroll down and click the save button. There, we've saved it. And actually I'm going to go back in and edit that and add it to the test collection. My demo collection, edit, save those changes. So something new that we added this work cycle is it now says that it's in the collection on this page. It used to just say what projects it was in. It now also says what collection, so I can just go there. And you can see the objects here. The other thing that we did, it's not on the collection page because it's actually tied to projects. But there's some filter options here. We did a lot of work on workflow status to get that working properly. So you can filter by workflow status. You can also filter by project. And then the new thing that we did this work cycle is once you've filtered by workflow status and filtered by project, or just in general, but this is one of the big use cases, is you can check these objects, and then you can publish them just from this page. It will say, are you sure? And now I'm hoping, yeah, now there's a discovery link to Tidewater. This link won't work because we're just in my local development environment, but it has published it to Tidewater. Likewise, you can select multiple and you can unpublish them from anything that they're currently published to. So our hope is that this solves some of the issues. You can, of course, select all on the page right there. With regards to bulk publishing of objects, if you have a project that you're working on, you can just select everything in that project. You can select things that are currently, in a certain workflow status, and you can select all of those objects or whichever objects you want to publish, and publish them all in that way. So there's still probably some further conversations to be had there in terms of what else we need in terms of publishing. But our hope is that this is at least a lot easier than going to each individual object page and doing that, which is quite cumbersome when you have a lot of objects. I think that's everything I have to demo, so I will stop sharing. Gabrielle, is there anything else you wanted to say regarding comment? Because I think that's all of my slides.
I think for today's demo, I think that's enough. Margaret, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Again, I want to echo Gabriella's sentiments. Margaret, we so much appreciate you really stepping in during this last work cycle and the leadership that you provided to the team. So thank you again. All right, so I just had a little bit of wrap-up slides. First, our next work cycle, we took a look at the calendars. Of course, the holidays always make it a little challenging to schedule. And so we've decided that we're going to go ahead and just wait until January. There's a lot of work happening on the campuses locally in this upcoming quarter. And so we'll start formal sprints again on January 7th and go through the beginning of March. It is a bit early for us to finalize the plans for that work cycle, but based on our prioritization, there are some themes that we think are probably pretty likely for us to be focusing on then. For comment, implementing features that directly support content ingest efforts. So the project continuing work on the project workflow, UI refinements, making sure that the support for complex objects is solid, looking at object lifecycle auditability, also articulating metadata model gaps and any mitigations that are needed for that, and also develop and test production hardening practices. I think we're getting to the point at Santa Barbara, and I think it's getting closer in San Diego too, where we're really starting to plan for bringing content into our production instance. And so this is going to be a very important as we're looking to put things into production for the first time. For Daylight, just continuing to develop shared components that support the creation of viable micro front ends for both Comet and also any other discovery layers that we want to build sitting on top of Comet. For Lark, finalizing the production deployments and architecture questions, and also just better understanding the UI needs and how those can be directly supported by Daylight. And then finally, some product and component architecture planning, implementing the IIIF manifest production serving changes. So that's the Empire project, and evaluate and test alternative queue solutions for Sidekick. This is just a good point to sort of check in again on where we are in terms of prioritization. So you can see a lot of the things that I just mentioned. We're seeing some production hardening practices, refining those project workflow UIs, the minimum metadata implementation. So really just looking towards focusing on the things that are highest priority in the next work cycle. Just a reminder also, I should update this. This is now officially Michael. Please, you can always stay up to date if you're interested on UC Tech Slack. Either we have both an extremely active Surfliner channel if you are interested in getting pretty granular updates from the team. If you just want occasional updates, like when the sprint reviews are published, we also have a Surfliner Announce channel where we try to share those types of things. Like I mentioned before, we have our Surfliner blog where a lot of this content is also shared. And then please feel free to reach out to either me or Michael at UCSD, who serve as the project owners for Surfliner. And I think that is it in terms of formal updates. So are there any questions? Please feel free, if you have any, to go ahead and enter those into the chat. You're also welcome to just raise your hand and mute yourself. But I will stop talking for a moment to give folks an opportunity to ask any questions.
I think I'll stop recording too, in case people don't want to be recorded. Give them a couple of minutes.
That would be great, Gabriella. Thank you.
Okay.